paranormal. It surrounds us. It's everywhere. Tonight, you will hear from the people who live and work within these highly active locations, all in the efforts to discover America's most haunted. With your host, ghost hunter and author, Dan Terry.
Good evening, boys and ghouls. I am Dan Terry, your ghost host with the most haunted, right here on the UNX Network, which is where you all need to be. Let me tell you a story. It happened to me a few years ago. I got called in by another group to help out with an investigation. It was an old bar, and the guy who lived in there, he actually lived in there now. It was kind of his private bar. It had a Harley in the middle of the floor. He had some apartments upstairs. But back in the past, a man had been murdered in there. And they told me the local legends. I did not realize what they were saying was really off. And as I am in there doing my thing with the spirits, they're getting, this one in particular is getting angrier and angrier. And it got to the point a black curtain, just blackness, came down and separated me from the other side of the room. I could hear papers being thrown, things being picked up, this kind of a hoarder situation. There was stuff being thrown, and then the ghost went through the room I was in and out what used to be the back door. And the door was sealed. My wife was sitting in front of the door, and while I'm talking, she suddenly jumps up, slaps her hand over her mouth, and freezes. And she said it was like electricity. There was goose flesh on the bottoms of her feet. There was so much energy come through. And the whole thing was because I had the wrong story, completely wrong. I went to a local historical society. I got old newspapers, found out we were so far off because they were quoting legends and local rumors. Totally missed it. And all I did was upset the ghost, and they wouldn't talk to me anymore. So I learned on that instance how important it is to know the history of what we're doing. My guest tonight is Brian Clary, and he is a history teacher, and he's also the founder of Spectral Research and Investigations in Huntington, West Virginia. We met when I went to the Paranormish conference. Hey guys, I'm wearing the shirt, right? When I went to the Paranormish conference this year, and he was a speaker before me, and he was just incredible as we were discussing how important the history is. He was given a lecture, and I was blown away because I agree with him completely, and I asked him if he'd be a guest on the show. So let me introduce you to Brian Clary.
How's it going, Brian?
Bud? All right. Tell me about the importance of history. I don't know if you was able to hear, but I had my own experience where I had the wrong history, and all I did was upset the ghost.
So when anybody gets let me go to a little bit back. The way I'm looking at this and the why I think history is so important is we see like the paranormal TV. We've seen it for years. We've experienced it for years. And what often happens is on paranormal TV is these folks name the team, name the show, etc. You get a team that comes in, they want to check out a location, they go into a location, and 95% of the time they outsource historical information. They go and they find a local historian, they find the owner, they find somebody from the area that is privy to this information. Therefore, they get that information from that source on location a lot of times and are able to make judgments, snap judgments, or assertions from that. One of the things that I think is important from my background, I'm a history teacher, like you said. I'm also working on my PhD in history with a specialization in research and especially in European history. And one of the things that I've always noted as really important is that I and my team probably need to know the information before we get there. So I want to know kind of what we're dealing with before we actually physically get to meet anyone. I think that's very important because there's a lot of places and a lot of folks out there, as you all know, that will, I'm not going to say outright lie, although that does happen, but there's a lot of folks that are misinformed or they are spouting on an agenda. Maybe that agenda is a financial agenda, or maybe they have some other little backing that is really important for them that story not be changed. Um, I find it very interesting to go in, and one of the first things we do when we are talking to a location is we start preliminarily looking at the location through things like the Sanborn fire maps, historical records, county historical records, and so on before I talk to anybody. Because I want to get an idea of what is there, what is the background of the history of a location, and therefore, when I start hearing stories, do I find some common links that I can explore further? That is very, very critical information. It's something that it's useful application for real life outside of the paranormal world. It's just simple, basic, taking the time to cross all your T's, dot all your I's, and kind of get everything in place beforehand before you go in and you're not informed. It makes a couple things about it are really important is it gives you an opportunity to learn and explore further before you get a story of any kind.
Mm-hmm.
And you have an idea of what you can expect. Is there some really dark history? Is there not a dark history? Is there just something that might be light or something that's friendly? If it's friendly, by all means, the last thing I want to do is go into it like it's a serial murderer.
Right.
So giving all of that stuff into place beforehand is very, very important to just kind of arm yourself with the best opportunity to kind of possibly speak with something that might be left behind.
And I agree with you, but what about those that want to go in blind so they are not looking for something specific? The sensitives aren't feeling what they expect rather than what's really there?
You know, I don't have any problem with that. That's just not my style. I think that kind of methodology works for certain people.
Mm-hmm.
And I can see that being a possibility for if you want to experience things on the fly and not go in with any preconceived notions. I get that. To kind of go in blank to a location can be kind of useful. But I think that largely depends on the group that's working and their own methodology. Our methodology, when you look at our logos and stuff like that and our historical background, it is very clear we are a paranormal and historical research association. So we kind of tie the two together.
Mm-hmm.
And we do put a lot of emphasis. I'm hesitant to say more than other groups, but I also know how other groups function. A lot of groups do that outsourcing program, or they just go on newspapers.com and do that. That's fine. That's fine for different groups. That's just not kind of how my methodology goes. Now, as far as sensitives, we have a sensitive on our team, or who I believe to be a very sensitive person.
Okay.
And we try and kind of go blank in with her. And what I mean by that is not giving her the background of the location before we got there. For one example, when you were in Beckley, you met Travis Ardnich.
Yes.
He was the gentleman from Deep End Antiques. When we went to that location after the conference, and this member of our group had never been there before and had very, very, very little knowledge of the stories of that location. So when she got there, we just took her on a walk. We took her around the location, kind of around his building, around the different parts of the property, and kind of just let her kind of explore. And it was cool because we already had the background knowledge, and some of the things that she was pinging on actually made sense. For example,
Okay.
Civil War camp very nearby. There were Civil War campments and Civil War troop movements up around that location very commonly during the Kanawha Valley campaigns in 1861 through 1863. So that was one thing. She talked about feeling like there was something aggressive in one of the back rooms, and like that there had been issues with drugs and violence, which there was before she had any background knowledge of that. So there was a
Okay.
lot of stuff that she was able to ping in on. So that kind of allowed us to, in a sense, corroborate what she was saying. So that was kind of cool.
Yeah, but history, I agree, is completely, well, without history, it's a fairy story. It's a campfire tale.
Absolutely.
You got to have something to go along with it. So tell me about the antique store. I know a lot of our people, by the way, our friends from Mountaineer Paranormal are listening. So,
Oh, okay.
great guys. Yeah.
Absolutely. So Deep End Antiques is built on the property of a former hotel called the Honey and Rock Hotel. It was built in, I believe, 1963, 1964, somewhere in that. I can't remember off the top of my head. We did some background stuff on it, but it's been a while. But it was built as a kind of a way to play off of a local play that was really popular, the Honey and the Rock play. It was drawing a lot of tourists back in the 60s and 70s. Still around today, although it's much less well known today. But they built this hotel as a way to capitalize on the market for people coming in and out of town. So they built this hotel, and it started out fairly well. This hotel was, for its time, pretty well state of the art. Had a big pool on property and all that stuff. But as with a lot of stuff, as you started getting into the late 70s and early 80s, the push for this play kind of started to dry up a little bit.
Okay.
A lot of people stopped coming, and when people stop coming, it ends up getting to a point where other people start filling in those slots, and sometimes the people that are coming into these hotels like that, we know, are less than savory. There ended up being a local nightclub that was established on the same property that brought in a lot of problems with prostitution, rumored um, mob associations, gambling. There was a lot of violence and drugs being pushed out of that location for years. Eventually, it actually had to close because of it. There was a meth lab that exploded in one of the rooms. That's why when you get there, one of the rooms is completely gone. There were gentlemen that were involved in a fight, and one of them actually was stabbed and almost killed. It actually stabbed him in the heart. People found dead nearby. A police officer was murdered right out front. A lot of different stories in this location. So we actually met. Yeah, it's a lot. It's kind of a cesspool, as I referred to it with another podcaster. It's a cesspool of all kinds of nasty stuff.
Yes.
So we met Travis actually in Beckley at the little street fair they do in September, October. It's called Beck's Oddities Fair. He was actually set up right across from us, and we talked to him about possibly doing an investigation. We met with him the night before we left, and we kind of got some background from him. And then I know that myself and my co-founder Teresa started looking at some background stuff as well.
Okay.
And started trying to line up some of the stories. And one of the stories was that there was a little boy drowned in the pool. We were not able to corroborate that. However, right above it, up on the hill, is the Black Knight Country Club, which there was a near drowning in that pool. So there's a possible link to that story, even though the location was wrong. It was very close by, could be easily misremembered. But that's one example of why the history is so important. Is because we were able to, at least for our knowledge, unless something wasn't recorded, we were able to kind of push that story aside. There were a lot of rumors up on the same place, that Black Knight Country Club, of a lot of stuff during the Satanic Panic. There was a murder up on top of the hill. So right here in this little area that this antique store is in, there's a lot of nasty stuff. So we met him. We set up for an investigation of his property, went down, and we're pretty blown away by some of the crazy stuff that was going on the location. A lot of very, very unique stuff. If you hear two little boys, they're right in front of me right now. Hey guys, I'm live, so just kind of keep it down a little bit, okay?
What the heck?
That was
I
my
haven't
oldest.
heard. I haven't heard that since the last exorcism I was part of.
Well, he might as well be on there sometimes. But no, when we got to the location, it was kind of interesting because we kind of had some ideas of like the murders and such like that on the property.
He said help.
I'm live.
I'm sorry.
We had an idea of some of those murders and stuff like that were going on, but when we got there, some of the stories that we were hearing and some of the things that we were actually having happen didn't really line up. It was kind of strange, including like there was one story that Travis told us when we got there of his little buddy, which is a spirit that he has had in his family for years, something
Yep.
called an ovnik. The ovnik is a little barn spirit that can be good or bad depending on how you treat it. It's neutral, but if you give it offerings of food and salt and stuff like that, it can be positive. Or if you treat it negatively, it can get really bad really quickly. So they have that kind of in place. And we learned about that fairly quickly because he actually got to show it to us. And most of our team at this point has seen it over different times.
Right. Is this an elemental then?
Pretty much, it's kind of right there in that same. It's
Okay.
in that realm, yeah.
Wow, I've never really believed in those, so I'm shocked.
I honestly, it's the first time I've really ever encountered something like that. So
Yeah.
it was something that I did not expect either. It takes the form of like a cat. And the first time we went, he asked me, I went into the back room there and he's got these two ports up to the attic area. And I looked up at those ports and I said, do you have attic space up there? And he said, no, not really, but that's where I keep my critter. And I was like, what are you talking about? And he said, yeah, I've got a little buddy that lives up there in an ovnik. And I was like, what is that? Because I'd never really heard the story. Long story short, he is a descendant of some Slavic immigrants that came over in the late 1800s that worked in the coal mines, and they were and they came over and they were used as indentured servants in the mines, and they brought along their legends and their rumors and their stories and such. And one of them was that this family heirloom called the ovnik. And he said, if you want to see it, I'll show it to you. And he said, come over here. And he put me in front of a mirror. And he said, if you want to see it, just wait here for a minute. He put me in front of the mirror and made me look in the mirror. And I was sitting there in the mirror for a little bit, and nothing was happening. I really wasn't seeing anything. And then it eventually got to a point where I started seeing some movement. Stop. I started seeing some movement. I looked over, and over my shoulder, I could see this little thing standing above some of my guys up on a coat rack. And it was the small little black critter. Had really bright green eyes and little tiny little white pointed teeth. And I looked at it, and it looked at me. And as soon as it saw me look at it, it jumped down and ran away. And I tried to follow where it was, and it disappeared, and I couldn't find it again. Now, other members of my team have seen it different times too.
Is this a paranormal creature, or is this some kind of animal?
No, if it's an animal, it has the ability to go into different dimensions and stuff, which is because it would disappear.
So is this a Slavic version of a leprechaun?
Something similar, honestly, I think.
Wow.
It's something that I've never really encountered before.
I have never heard of one, so that's incredible. Okay.
Sorry, I was trying to deal with something.
It's all right. I understand. Somebody
for the record, for your folks that are listening, I'm at a football practice right now, and I have two 8-year-olds right in front of me splashing each other with Gatorade. so that's what it was.
Not a problem, man. All right. So you said that there was something heavy or something negative in that shop, the antique shop. What was it?
So I'm scarce to say what it is exactly. A lot of
Okay.
people throw out the moniker demonic and stuff like that, which I'm very, very hesitant to kind of label on anything. Although I
Right.
kind of fall along more in a category, like you said, about the elemental. There is something on that property in one of those rooms that I think is like a layover from all the negatives that have happened on this location, plus maybe
Huh?
some of the animalistic stuff that's been there for years beforehand. I don't know what it is. I don't know what the name of it is, but we started kind of having some interactions with it where it was, I wouldn't say necessarily hostile, but it had the ability to seemingly mimic. It had the ability to make you well known that it was not happy in its, or it was not happy that you were in or we were in its location. And
Okay.
it seemingly got to where it reminded me vaguely of like something reptilian. You couldn't see it, but there was like this black shadow that seemed to kind of come along with it a lot of times. And when it really got really powerful, you could start feeling the electricity in the air. And at one point, like several of our team members were in this room, um, and we were hearing footsteps on the walls and on the ceiling.
Wow.
And you could tell where the footsteps were coming from. They weren't coming from the floor; they were coming from the wall and ceiling, which was pretty wild. And it sounded like I equated it to like a lizard walking up the wall or something like that. It was
Okay.
something that we really hadn't encountered. And I know through many other times of going to this location, every time you go there, it's like you get assaulted. It drains you. The things kind of manipulate you. They can show you things that are probably its ability to kind of manipulate the way you're thinking and trying to show you itself in maybe a more human form.
Really?
Um, the way it's weird because I don't know really what to call it, but I think it's something left over from a very, very long time.
Is it falling
And
into the gin category then?
it could very well be.
I,
It's, I think it's something been there for a very, very long time. That's like animal back to
okay.
like thousands of years of history. I mean, you're talking West Virginia, Southern West Virginia. You're talking
Yeah.
Native American history. You're talking the revolutionary history, the frontier history, and all of that kind of coupled, along with all the nasty stuff that have happened right here in this place. I think
Boy,
it's
that's
just
for
kind of
sure.
it's a conglomeration of everything, and I think it shows itself in different ways to different people to try to show that it has. I don't know if it's like a way to kind of. I hate to use this term because it's gonna make me sound like a teenager, but like flex its intelligence
Okay. Yeah.
to show. Like at one point, we went in and just one real quick example. We went in and to this back room the first time we went, and Travis had told us one of the ways to get activity to show up in this back room, which he uses for storage, was to put the little chain lock. It was actually an old hotel room and it had the old chain lock and stuff still. And he
Right.
said every time that they've been in there and they've been working and putting stuff away, if they put that little chain lock on, it seems like everything becomes more hostile. So we get to that location and we start out almost immediately out in that room. And from the get go, we were out there sitting down on the floor. We had the door shut, but not chain locked at that point. And I heard a scream outside. And it is Beckley, and it is in a kind of a wild end of town. And there are a lot of people that walk up and down the streets, and there's a road right next door. So I figured, oh, somebody was outside. So I went outside to check and make sure there was nobody out there. I didn't see anybody. That doesn't mean that wasn't somebody just kind of going by and screaming. But I walked out of the room. We have some of our spirit boxes going.
Hey,
And
Brian, hold
yeah.
on. I want to hold your story right there while we pay some bills.
Oh, okay.
And I'll get right back with you because I want to hear the rest of this. Okay.
I got you.
All right, friends, hang on. We're going to hear the rest of that story in just a moment, but a word from our sponsors.
This is Margie Kay inviting you to check out the latest edition of Onyx News Magazine with thought-provoking articles about UFOs, extraterrestrials, cryptids, consciousness, and amazing photos of anomalous objects and more. And there's always a feature article by our managing editor, Lee Spiegel. Get a free digital issue with your free subscription to the UNX Network, or get a printed copy with your X Club Gold subscription in the U.S. Visit unxnetwork.com to see details. That's unxnetwork.com.
All right, friends and fans, and we are back. And we were just listening to Brian Clary, the founder of Spectral Research and Investigations, telling us about a creature we're not going to call demonic, but it's something pretty strong. So go ahead, Brian.
So when we left off, he told us to chain the lock. I had just heard the scream. We went out to check to make sure, but like I said, I don't know if it was paranormal or not. So we went back in the building, and as we were coming in the doorway, one of the spirit boxes said, "Don't come in." Well,
Wow.
at that point, it was kind of interesting the way it fell in. So I went ahead and came in, and I remembered him saying chain the lock. So I did do that. And almost immediately, and I don't know if I'm necessarily what I would call sensitive in any way, but one of the things that I do believe is that my energy can be used pretty easily, because it seems like everywhere I go, especially if it's something a little bit on the stronger side, I feel like I've had the heck kicked out of me all day afterwards. Almost immediately, I could see this like room kind of change, like within my mind's eye.
Okay.
And you knew it was an old hotel room. and you could see like the bed, and you could see the two little end tables and that straight back chair that they put in the old like Super 8 hotels that was so uncomfortable, and you could almost see the room, even though it was storage. You could almost see it. One thing that caught me off guard is that one of the stories was at this location that there was a prostitute that was possibly assaulted, possibly murdered, but possibly just assaulted so badly that she lost a baby.
Okay.
Could not verify that story. I will be 100% honest with you. It probably is just a story, but it was kind of interesting because right after we chained that lock and came in, one of the things that I noticed in that room was that this lady was sitting here in a chair, skinny blonde, younger, sitting in a chair, kind of rocking back and forth, kind of with her knees up and just like visibly distraught. She wasn't saying anything, but you could see she was kind of like just rocking back and forth, like she was stressed out to some degree. She
Okay.
never said anything. But after like seeing that, like it was physically felt like I just had my teeth kicked in. And we had like experienced a couple different times in this location where different people saw different things like that. And we had some folks with us that were reportedly psychic sensitive is the word that I wanted to use.
Yes.
That mentioned the feeling like whatever this thing was in this room was kind of able to change forms and able to kind of show itself in different ways and mimic and kind of do what it wanted. We've had other instances where in photos, and I'm pretty good about spotting pareidoia and kind of looking at different pictures and whatnot and being able to use computer software to try to figure out where reflections are coming from and such like that. But the one thing that really caught me off guard, and I didn't get a chance to get the pictures from you, but if you message Travis Hardnett, you can get them. We took some photos, or he actually took some photos of us in that room. And a couple photos that popped up right after he and I were talking was that there was this thing in the window that could be seen.
Okay.
And I could not match it up with any kind of reflections. And I had pictures and videos of the room that I could not completely, I can't obviously say it's paranormal, but I could not match up the angles and stuff in such a way that I could say 100% it wasn't either. But there was something that showed up in the window that was very, very odd. And he's got the pictures.
Okay.
But it looked kind of very, very strange. It looked like in the darkness, you could see these yellowish looking eyes and kind of the faint outline of what looked like a goat. And it was looking in the window. And one of the pictures, and this is where I think the pareidolia element comes in here, but I'm not sure. But one of the things is one of the pictures kind of looks more, and you can see it when you pull up the picture. You zoom in, it kind of looks like it has like a bishop's type of hat or a cardinal's type hat on.
Okay.
I don't know. It seems to show itself in different ways depending on how it feels at the point or whatever it wants to do. It can be more direct, like the goat thing.
Mm-hmm.
It can be more kind of minute. We had like folks that were talking about seeing a black shape that kind of looked like a lizard or a snake come in the room. It doesn't seem to be overly hostile, but it touches. It does let you know it's there. It zaps the energy in the room. And it is very, very strong in terms of like its ability to let itself be known to you.
Okay. Hey, I do have a couple things. First off, one of the people on the chat is asking how to spell that creature that you was talking about that appeared as a cat.
O-V. I think it's O-V-I-N-N-I-K. O-V-I-N-N-I-K.
Okay. And Mountaineer Paranormal. So I guess Austin says,
It's probably
Brian,
Austin, yep.
If you remember, tell the story of where me and you were in that room and I got my leg grabbed and I got pushed.
Yeah, that's the exact same room that we're talking about.
Okay.
When I was talking about it, like being able to touch, and like we were standing in the darkness, and you can see, like, you remember the old like little hotel rooms where they have like the little closet as you come in the door.
Mm-hmm.
something looked like it was peeking out of there, and you could see like this shadow form kind of pop out of there a little bit, and like red and yellow eyes kind of showing up just here and
Wow.
there. And he and I and one other friend of ours was in there, and we could not match it up in terms of what this was or what was causing this. It's very, very odd.
That's wild.
He got touched. There was also a lady in there one time we went in who apparently it got a little bit handsy with her as well. Very direct handsy, in fact. And it was strong enough that it shocked her to a point where she had to leave. Like she physically had to leave the room. I don't know what to make of it. I really don't. I just, from what I feel and just from the general experiences of being around it, I don't think it's like overtly hostile or anything like that, but I think it has a boundary line. And if you cross that boundary line and you're there for very long, it's like saying, you don't belong here. This is my spot. So,
okay. Well, let's, you threw some videos my way. Let's take a look at a couple of those and we'll watch them and then see what we're supposed to be hearing.
okay.
Race, would you play one for us? Okay, what was that one?
All right, so that is at a location called Food Among the Flowers. It was the first time that investigation had ever been in that location. So a little bit of background on it. It was a former funeral home that was built in 1936 on the west side of Charleston. Formerly on a Holmes location as well. But this is the first time the location had ever been done. We went in with Austin, was actually there with us. And what you're hearing is a recording taken off a parabolic mic. Okay. And the parabolic mic, we are aiming it down a hallway from the apartment section of the funeral home. And the business now is like a floral shop. It's a catering business. It's a party shop and so on. And we are up on the location, and most of our folks at that point are actually down in the basement. We're up on the third floor, which is where the offices and stuff like that are. And it's myself and Austin and my audio man, James. And James has a parabolic mic. And you'll hear that like metallic ping. Right. That is him pulling the trigger of the parabolic mic at that point. And at this point, we were having trouble trying to get sound off of the parabolic mic model that we had. So I had to relay it through an auxiliary cord to that little Victrola record player to actually get the audio. But what you end up hearing is you'll hear me like, because we had been hearing sounds of like things coming closer. And there was actually a really loud bang in the room next door to us. And at that point, the room, as we started getting louder, I felt like the need to say, is there anybody out there to try to get something to answer? And right there, it just like, I don't know what it was. It sounded like somebody like growling at us or whatever, but that is straight off of our parabolic mic. I don't know what that really is. I can't really make head nor sense of actually what it's saying, if anything. But it was wild to hear. It is a response of some type that I cannot figure out.
Race, would you play that one more time for us? Sounds like someone asked a question and it was answering it.
It did. I just don't know what it was saying. I tried to like amplify it. I tried to take it down and slow it down. And it just kind of sounds like a grumbled, like if anything, it'd be like a hello. Okay. But I'm hesitant to really say it's hello at all, but it is very interesting that it happened directly right afterwards.
It did. All right, Race, would you play one of the other videos?
So I can show. I'm running the camera right now, and I've got Leela and Michael next to us. Everybody else is outside of the building. And you all can hear those loud footsteps and stuff. That is in here with us. All right, I'm going to knock. Can you answer?
make it sound that way.
Okay.
It was very faint.
Can you do it a little bit louder for us?
Okay.
It's very faint in the background there. It sounded like a voice or a thud of something like that in the background. I tried to amplify that. That is actually from the Kreitz, Greg Kreitz Octagon House in Circleville, Ohio.
Okay.
We've been there now twice. We just completed kind of our last bit of filming there on July 4th. That was actually taken on July 4th.
Mm-hmm.
We had several things that night, but it mostly was kind of relayed through sound. A lot of our experience was through sound. We had a lot of knocks, a lot of strange bangs and stuff like that that we cannot really identify. That one is kind of one of the fainter ones. Some of the other ones are a little bit more assertive. But we had a lot of sounds that night. I haven't even completely got all the film done yet, but those are just a couple of examples.
Would you play another one for us, Race?
All right. We took the sound down for a little bit so you all can hear a little bit better. Is there anybody in here with us right now? Ooh.
Let's find it. Let me see if anyone's still in there.
Yeah, that's what I'm wondering. I'm wondering if that's JT downstairs.
Is there anyone still in the building?
Are you serious?
I just heard it like in this area.
Yeah.
I don't know if you all just heard that on the audio, but there's nobody in the house except us, and we're hearing like very loud walking around.
We were asking because we got very loud footsteps downstairs.
Ooh. That sounds like somebody shuffling around.
Mm-hmm.
Is that you?
Can you do that again?
Okay. That was pretty wild. What do you think? Is that normal for that place? The spirits
The one of the big reports in that place is a lot of sounds and such, a lot of footsteps, even like during the day when we've been there. When we went on July 4th, actually my kids came with me, and my wife, and we were there kind of previewing or like kind of walking through the building and such like that beforehand. My wife loves old structures and stuff too. She likes looking at them. And the kids, my oldest especially, wanted to come and do like a little mini ghost hunt. So I said, okay. So they came with me, and we were kind of walking around and doing some like historical filming, some B-roll filming and stuff to kind of finish our episode Locked In on it. And right even in the middle of the day, like footsteps from upstairs, really loud bangs, but also like the first time we went was back in, I believe it was late April. We went, and a lot of my team had actually went out to go down the road to like Sheets or somewhere like that to get something to eat.
Mm-hmm.
And it was myself and one of my assistant videographer was there still. And we were kind of just hanging out in the front room where they have kind of their little safe house with a little bit of electric that the building has and stuff. And we were in there working, and immediately we started hearing sounds upstairs. We kind of went to explore, couldn't figure out what they were, so we went back to the safe house. As we were down in the safe house, I was standing at the table kind of putting out equipment, and my videographer was sitting kind of working on her camera, and it sounded like somebody walked right up next to us and was standing right there in the doorway right next to us, and we both turned to look right there at that point because we would have thought for sure that somebody on our team had came in, but there was nobody there. The same day, like right after that happened, we were sitting in that front room waiting on them to come back, and they'd already been gone. We checked the door up front of the building to make sure it was latched. It was shut because there are people that kind of wander in from time to time, and you kind of got to be careful on that. And sitting there, and I'm just kind of looking in this little room towards the hallway where the door is, and I can start seeing sunlight. and the sunlight get larger and larger and larger, the door had opened itself. Sounds, doors opening, really, really, really loud bangs and stuff like that. Really loud noises are very, very common in the place.
Okay.
Some of it could probably, or some of it could be possibly animal related. However, what I will say is we did a very thorough scope of the building beforehand to check for like raccoons, because that's one report of the place. And even at night, we went out because raccoons are nocturnal. We would expect them to be out foraging at night. We had people stationed outside the building to look for them to see if they were out moving around. We did not see any animal activity that night. So, like I said, I cannot necessarily say 100% it's paranormal, but we did our due diligence to try and make sure what we were getting wasn't a form of contamination.
I think there was one more video, if I remember. I want to hit that, and then I want to talk to you more about Erie Echoes. So, Race, would you play that last video for us?
Just as distinct, and we didn't even hear him leave. So we've got something going on.
Ooh, that was loud.
This thing is a bitch to get used to. Just trying to get it on to where I can turn it off.
There you go. That's all fine.
I'm going to try turning off the other one just to see for a little bit. Just turn off our lights for a few minutes and just kind of let it sit.
Michael, you have to turn yours off for a second?
Yeah, we'll just see. Just for a few minutes, it's fine.
Same place, and we was hearing the thumps and the footsteps quite plainly that time.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah, that's another one of those times where we tried and we had people outside the building. We made sure that it was just the three of us in there at that point.
Okay.
We ran kind of 3-man in, 3-man out for most of the evening, and we were having a lot of interaction, especially early. And then later in the night, it kind of died down. Oddly enough, that night when it was filmed was July 4th, and everybody in Circleville, I think, was setting off fireworks right shortly after that video was taken.
Mm-hmm.
So we had to stop filming for a while to kind of let it kind of subside, because there was no way we would get any audio done at all. We were kind of dilly-dallying around, and then once it finally died off, we went back to kind of working. And the other team had some experience as well. There'll be several more things that will kind of show up when we do our episode of Locked In on it. There's some things that we haven't put out there yet, but they are pretty cool as well. There was one instance that my entire team was in one room of this building, and we all thought that somebody busted in the door, and we had to go look because the sound was so loud. It sounded like somebody was trying to break in on us, and we checked the whole location, up, down, outside, and so on, and there was nobody there. But it is on one of our recordings, very pronounced.
Oh, I want to hear that too. All right, real quick, we got just a couple minutes left, but I do want to hear about your Locked In series and also the Erie Echoes. So lay it on us.
So Locked In has been kind of a plan for us for quite a while, and we're still kind of playing around with kind of our formula and how we're doing filming. Myself and my videographer, Casey Brab, are kind of the ones that have kind of spearheaded that element. We've kind of tried to put together a series that blends historical background with paranormal investigation techniques and just kind of a blended episode. Instead of focusing all on the paranormal or all on the history, we're trying to bring the two together and trying to bring more light on historic cool locations that necessarily don't always get the limelight. Everybody knows Trans-Allegheny Lunatic Asylum. Everybody knows Mansfield State Reformatory. Everyone knows West Virginia Penn. There's not a whole lot of people yet that know places like the Heyman's House in Sutton, West Virginia, or places like Deep End Antiques, or places like the Greg Kreitz Octagon House, and so on. So we're trying to bring light to a lot of our smaller locations here in West Virginia, but also Kentucky and Ohio. We did the Ross Opera House over in Kentucky. We're looking at doing several more in Kentucky over the next couple years. We're also looking to kind of explore more into Ohio with Fairfield County Infirmary Some of the more well-known ones up there along the Cleveland area, that's something we're going to kind of build onto as well. But it's all about kind of preserving the history, but also bringing people's attention to these lesser-known locations that are equally as important. Just for an example, like Fairfield County Infirmary was almost destroyed.
Okay.
It was almost destroyed. The Ohio University Lancaster, right across the road from it, they almost destroyed it. They were going to actually level the building and they were going to turn it into dorms and stuff for the college until they did ground penetrating radar and found a bunch of skeletons underneath the ground standing upright because they didn't have enough space to bury everybody. They had there's rumors of 1,200 people plus buried on the property. We do know of at least 300 or 400 that are officially on that ground, but they were actually pinging off of these circular objects when they did ground penetrating. It was showing circular and in a pattern. And they couldn't figure out what it was until they started thinking, oh, wait a minute, that is skull tops that are pinging off the radar. But that's another thing. It's like that kind of stuff could be gone. A lot of these historical sites, like the Heyman's house, almost fell into disrepair until Miss Frame and her husband bought it and started bringing it back. Deep End Antiques is an operating business. He's trying to make a living, and he just has a lot of cool stuff going on there on the scene. But also like the Ross Opera House and these other historic places are really important to keep going because we are losing history at such a monumental level. And as a teacher, I'm seeing like history becoming less and less and less important. And it's not getting any better. And unfortunately, a lot of our students and our kids and our younger generation are losing the benefits of history. And that's one thing I've tried to bring into my classroom as well, is trying to show how important history is through the paranormal. One of the things that my kids really enjoyed doing was actually doing a little paranormal history unit last summer where they got to look at like historic locations like Fairfield and Trans-Allegheny and Waverly Hills and so on. And kind of looking at the stories, the paranormal side. They got their dose of paranormal TV in, and also got to look into like the newspaper records and historical records of the location to kind of make those stories make sense. Brian, and that's a very good time.
It's awesome. I'm glad you're doing it. In the last 30 seconds I got with you, Erie Echoes, when is it and what do you got?
So November 18th, 2023, here in Huntington, West Virginia at the Museum of Radio and Technology, we are doing the Erie Echoes Paranormal Convention and Vendors Fair. It's going to be a opportunity for the general public and anybody that is interested in the paranormal to come together and kind of embrace their inner paranormal. Ghost tours, historical tours, and so on. As you see on the poster, there's going to be quite a bit of things going on. And we're trying to make it a family-friendly event for a lot of people to come in and experience something that the Huntington area hasn't seen yet.
All right. All right. Well, Brian, Clary, you've been an awesome guest, and we got to bring you back when you get some really great historical paranormal stuff. Let me know. We'll get you back here because I want to hear about it. All right?
I can do that.
All right, brother. Thanks again, and good luck on the sports this year.
All righty. Thank you, bud. Appreciate it.
Take care. All right, friends, there you go. You know how I am with history. I love history. I think it's the most important part of a ghost hunt, of anything. And first off, I do want to say very briefly, don't forget to become an UNX subscriber, as you saw on the little shot we had in the middle. Free magazine. You've got, gosh, what all of you've got? Access to the X blog. And the X blog has been crazy lately with all the UFO stuff, all the what else has been going on? We've had all these people talking to Congress about it. And so check it out. You go to the Onyx Network page, go down a little bit, free subscription, just take care of it. There's a better one, a gold one if you want. And I also want you to remember that on October 13th, 14th, and 15th is the X-Con near Kansas City. And that's the one we got to get to because they've got a lot of great speakers. Scott Walter is going to be the keynote speaker. He's awesome. They're going to show you a video called The Raymondville Terror. And that's something we all got to see. Speakers, you got Scott Walter, you got Bill Spicer, you got Dan Terry. What the hell is Dan Terry doing there? My God. Well, you can ignore him. And Gene Walker, who's been a guest on the show here before. So there's so much going on. You really need to become a member, keep up with the UnX network. And I think the most important thing I can say, the most important thing you can do is stay spooked. Good night, folks.